when it comes to energy, that is especially important. Ohio's economy relies on, is dependent on both low cost and reliable energy. We don't see many partners in this, unfortunately. The federal government seems to be totally incapable of coming up with an energy policy. And then, of course, we're always dependent on what could happen in the Middle East or with other oil-producing countries around the world. So last year, in about April, we decided we need to set out on our own policy. We had a convening meeting in April. In September, we had an energy summit here. It was a 2-day summit. We had about 50 panelists. We had about 1,000 people in the audience. And what we did was we laid out a number of goals for ourselves. We wanted to make Ohio energy independent. The shale play that we have going on in eastern Ohio gives us the opportunity to do that. We wanted to serve as a model because of the fact that the federal government can't do this. We thought that this would have to be led by the states. What better place to start the process than here? And in everything we did, however, and I'll touch on this at later times, we were very concerned about the fact that we have to be very sensitive about the environment. We cannot allow bad practices to harm the environment. That would not be good for Ohio. That would not be good for the citizens of Ohio. That wouldn't even be good for the industry. Because quite honestly, the industries that we're dealing with, they're only as good as the next problem that they have. And if one company in a particular industry has a problem, all the companies are going to get blamed for that. So what we did, as a result of our September summit, was we came up with 10, we call them pillars. We call them pillars for Ohio's energy future. And the one at the top of the list is shale. It's hard with everything that's going on in the state right now for shale not to be at the top. Early in the process, we identified shale as a major game changer for the state. The second item on our list is generation. We need an abundant source of electricity. We need an abundant source of natural gas. We also then need to have the supply where we need it and when we need it. One of the things that's going to happen is that you've probably been reading, there was an announcement yesterday in terms of Chesapeake, an announcement in terms of some processors and fractionators. The governor was over yesterday. There was an announcement with Mark West. They're going to have 2 processors and fractionator. These use tremendous amounts of electricity. We need to make certain that when these systems are put in place, that we have the electricity to run them when we need it and obviously where we need it. The governor touched on waste heat recovery. What we're trying to do is we're trying to take heat that would otherwise be wasted to use that for either the generation of electricity and or steam. Workforce training. One of the things that we're finding is that we have a big mismatch between the jobs that are available and the people with the appropriate skills. And the governor undertook this very early in the administration, and Rich will talk about this in greater detail. But we have to get the right people for these jobs. We need to have people who can service the jobs that are available in the shale industry in particular. This is going to be very important because this is a new industry for us. This is a high volume, high pressure industry that this state is not used to. This is going to require skills that are different than we've had in the traditional oil sector so far in this state. The governor also mentioned compressed natural gas. He has entered into an MOU with about 10 other states. Those states include Pennsylvania, Kentucky, West Virginia, as well as some major shale producers out west to see what we can do in terms of our fleets with regard to CNG. Director Blair, who I saw around here someplace, has undertaken or is in the process of undertaking a significant initiative with regard to the efficiency of not only state buildings in terms of energy consumption and water consumption, but we're also looking at the efficiency of the state fleet. No one has ever done this before in terms of, at what interval do we need to turn over our transportation fleet in order to be concerned about its energy efficiency. Coal kind of goes without saying because of the fact that so much of our electricity is currently produced in coal. Regulatory reform I will talk about with our various pillars. This will come up throughout the pillars because I want to talk to you a little bit about the risk assessment that we did. And then finally, renewables. So let me just quickly go through some of these pillars, and I'm just going to touch on the high points. First of all, again, shale is a new industry. It's a high-pressure, high-volume industry. It offers unique opportunities for us, but unique challenges. And because of that, one of the first things that we did was we talked to other states. We talked to the other states that are involved in major shale plays. We've spent a lot of time talking to North Dakota. We spent a lot of time talking to Pennsylvania, West Virginia. We tried to learn lessons from them. We wanted to know what they did well, what they did poorly, and what we needed to look out for. Based on our conversations with them, the first thing that we did was we did a risk assessment. We basically looked from cradle to grave in terms of where our regulations were strong and where they needed to be improved. This required a tremendous amount of cooperation across the government because, as you can see, in terms of the regulations that we had to deal with, we had ODNR, EPA, Commerce, Taxation, ODOT, but we also had to pull in Public Safety and the Board of Regents. So we basically were dealing across the government in terms of looking at how we regulate and how we approach this industry. And what did we come away with? In terms of modernizing our regulations, we are going to require the disclosure of chemicals. We are going to have improvements in well construction, improvements in pipeline safety. We're going to have improvements in underground injection control and underground wells. We're going to have a road use agreement so that companies don't have to go out and negotiate with each of the municipalities. We do that on a regional basis. And of course, we're going to have to oversee the construction of processors and fractionators. The second pillar that we had was generation. Again, we needed to make certain that we have sufficient supply when we need it. Now, one of the things that we looked at, one of the things that we asked the PUCO to do, which is I think kind of novel, is that if you want to go out and you want to say you want to purchase your electricity from solar, or say you want to purchase your electricity from wind, or whatever it is, and you decide that you want to do that, and you want to have the ability and the consumer choice to pay for that type of power, we're going to figure out a way to do that. The PUCO is going to figure out a way, based on new technology, how you can buy. If you want to buy, electricity from, again, wind, whatever, we're going to let you do that. We're going to figure out a way to do that. But we also need to make certain that we have adequate generating capacity when we need it. And again, one of the major impediments to that is going to be the federal EPA. So we're also going to ask the PUCO to look at the impact of what the federal regulations on power plants are going to do to the state. We also then, again, the processors and fractionators require a significant amount of electricity. We need to make certain that we can get electricity to those areas when we need it. And to do that, this is another area where the PUCO would ask them to look to make certain that we can supply electricity, especially to particular parts of the eastern part of the state. The governor talked about cogeneration and waste heat capture or recovery. We, in fact, he also said, we're in the top 10 in terms of the capacity to recover waste heat, and we're in the bottom 10 in terms of our actual ability to do that. So we're going to have a big effort to push cogen in this state. One of the things we're going to do is we're going to allow cogeneration to be added to the renewable standard. We're also going to allow cogeneration to be added to an efficiency standard that the utilities have to meet. And the other thing is that from now on, with regard to new construction or major renovations in the state, cogeneration has to be analyzed. It doesn't have to be, we're not mandating it, but in terms of new construction, we're saying that at least it needs to be looked at to see if it's the most cost-effective way to provide energy for buildings. In terms of workforce development, Rich is going to be talking on this more, and so I'm just going to say that we really appreciate, in terms of the capital bill, what the university presidents did in terms of identifying Stark State and Zane State as two capital projects that are essential to shale going forward and the ability to train workers for the shale industry. As the governor mentioned, we are part of a multi-state MOU dealing with looking at turning over a fleet and using compressed natural gas to power it. Energy efficiency. One of the things that we're going to be spending a lot of time on going forward is going to deal with technology, whether it's smart grids, smart meters. We are told that we are relatively far behind some of the other states in terms of our ability to use smart technology. We're also going to do this in terms of water. There's a lot of new technologies out there we want to take a look at in terms of the ability to purify water. As part of what the state is doing, Bob Blair has identified $16 million worth of projects that have a very short payback period of a couple of years. We're going to hopefully authorize him to be able to borrow from air quality to be able to fund those projects. And then after that, we're going to continue to look for ways to make state buildings more efficient, but also the state fleet more efficient. Coal. Again, it's hard when you talk about Ohio, it's hard not to deal with coal because of the fact that such a large percentage of our electricity is produced by coal. We're going to have at least $30 million in terms of the capital bill for coal research, including carbon sequestration. Carbon sequestration, there's a number of opportunities for that in terms of win-win situations where we would have the ability possibly to repressurize old oil fields and to be able to capture oil from those fields. We understand in terms of talking to the state geologists that we've only captured about 3 to 5% of the oil in this state. And so if we can use new technology, including carbon sequestration, to do that, we have the possibility at least of recovering a lot of oil from a lot of old fields. Director Nally is in the process of going through and streamlining the permitting process. We're also going to be asking for primacy. This deals on regulatory reform. We're also going to be asking for primacy dealing with federal wetlands permitting. Currently, the state of Ohio has primacy in a number of areas. For example, in the deep well injection, we have primacy, but the federal government has indicated that they are going to start giving states primacy with regard to wetland permitting, and we are going to request that. The final pillar deals with renewables, and here the real issue is, the first thing is what we didn't do, because I know there was a lot of speculation that we were going to abolish the standards and do away with the renewable standards. So the first thing is something that we did not do. We kept the standards in place. In addition to that, we're going to change some of the programs that we have within the state to make them more user-friendly in terms of the ability to access funds for either alternative fuels or to finance energy efficiency. And again, one of the things, going back to the green pricing, we are going to be using technology to push green pricing. So again, if you want to buy energy from whatever source, we want to make it so that you can do that.
Dick.